Great.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's share the screen here. Okay, so everyone can see that, I hope. Okay, awesome. Getting thumbs up. So, I'm gonna admit someone. Because I guess I also have that power.
Richie, we've got the waiting room. We'll take care of admitting people. Don't
Oh.
worry.
We got you, Richie. Yeah.
Gotcha. Sounds good. So as Michael said, I'm Richie Thaxton. I'm the current chair of GPSA awards. And so what we're going to do today is go through how you apply for GPSA travel and publication awards. And I'll say up front that if these awards are for students on the Moscow campus and online. If you are at a different campus or a WAMI student, for example, this really doesn't apply to you. So, do with that information what you need to do. But let's see. All right, which is perfect because we're going to start off with who is eligible. So as I said, this is for graduate and professional students. These are not for undergraduate students, for example, at the Moscow campus and online. So you can see this little asterisk. WAMI students, Boise, Idaho Falls, CDA students should seek travel publishing from their respective campus or somehow through their institution. So you can apply for one travel and one publishing award per fiscal year. The fiscal year is a little bit weird. It doesn't really align with the semesters, but it starts on July 1st and it ends June 30th. So you can have one travel and one publishing award per fiscal year. So there's some strategy in when you're applying for awards. For example, if you applied for an award on May 15th, you could also still apply for a travel award on July 15th because we've entered a new fiscal year, for example. You're also only eligible for an award if your college has an active GPSA representative. I think at this point, for this year, every college has a representative except perhaps the College of Business. I need to double check that. But otherwise, you are in a good place with that. And for current and full-time, and part-time students in good academic standing. A couple years back, we opened the GPSA awards to part-time students. Just keep in mind that part-time students, because they don't pay as much of the graduate student fees as full-time students do, they may not be as eligible for the full award amounts that I'll mention right now. So for travel awards, if you're traveling domestically, you're eligible for up to $700 in reimbursement. If you're traveling internationally, that goes up to $900. One thing to note with both of these awards is that these are reimbursement only. So we're not handing you $700 in straight cash for you to do what you want with. You are going to complete your trip and then talk with Kendall Cullen in the student affairs, and go through the reimbursement process where you'll list all the charges you incurred during your travel and then ask for that money to be reimbursed. For publishing, you are eligible for $700 basically per publication. So if you are applying as a single author, you can apply just as an individual, and the application is a little bit more straightforward, and you're eligible for $700. If there's two students on the same application, you can apply jointly for the $700. But there's a little bit more extra work you need to do in terms of you need to go through your department as a sponsor. You need to secure that. And there's a couple more aspects of the application you have to fill out just because we have multiple people applying for that award. The only other thing to mention here is that we're not going to give you funding before the travel or the publication occurs. Just like with travel, when you publish an article, the article has to be published or at least been accepted for you to be eligible for that reimbursement. We're not going to give you the money before there's any sort of confirmation that that is happening. All right, so for when to apply, I already mentioned the start and end of the fiscal year. For GPSA, travel and publication awards, there's 6 award cycles. So on these 6 dates, which you can see written there, that's when the GPSA committee meets and we decide, we take all the applications we've gotten for that cycle and we decide which of those applications merit receiving a travel or publishing award. So it's 2 months between each cycle. And so during that time, we have anywhere between 10, 15, sometimes more applicants vying for a limited amount of money. So it definitely helps you to apply not at that deadline, but a little bit earlier, especially if there's any potential issues you may have missed with your application. That gives us time to go through them before the actual meeting of the awards committee and help you revise anything that is problematic. So in terms of which cycle you actually apply for, when it comes to travel, you're able to apply to up to 2 cycles before your travel date and 1 cycle after your travel date. So as the example here, if you travel June 1st through the 5th, you can apply for that March 15th cycle, that May cycle. March would be the 2 months before, the cycle 2 months before, May would be the cycle, or sorry, not 2 months before, the 2 cycles before, May 15th would be the 1 cycle before, but you're still eligible to apply after your travel on that July 15th date. For publishing awards, you can apply once you've received written acceptance of your publication, and then up to 1 deadline following the publication itself. So if for example, if your article is published January 1st, you have to get that application into us January 15th, because after that award cycle, you're no longer eligible for that award. All right, so sort of the biggest news, if anyone has seen this sort of presentation in the past or has seen emails recently from GPSA, we're moving to an online, we have moved to an online application format. So one thing I really want to stress is that I've heard talk from the other representatives that students are using old PDF copies of the awards application that are floating around and then submitting those. I don't recommend that because those do not have the up-to-date information. There are some changes that have occurred since those sort of paper applications were made. One of the biggest one is who you send reimbursements to. So that information is definitely not up to date on the old ones. So please, if you're going to apply, use these online portals. It's basically just a Qualtrics survey, and it's pretty linear in that it tells you exactly what you need up front to have a good application, and it will lead you through each of the steps. So the applications are available on the GPSA website, which the link to that is right there. There has been issues with the website recently. I believe they're fixed. I checked it last night and I was able to access it with no problem. If you do run into a problem, feel free to email me. I'll be able to send out my email if you didn't get it from this presentation. And I can send you the link directly, but I think for now, crossing my fingers that the website is working and that you can access the applications through there. All right, so in general, to be a competitive applicant for the GPSA awards, please make sure to read the checklist. As I mentioned at the start of the Qualtrics forum, there is a checklist of everything you need that we're looking for the application. So please go through that. If there's any questions about any of the things, like what exactly do I include in the student cover letter? feel free to email me. I'm here to answer questions. But that'll give you an idea of what exactly you need for the application, which includes the student cover letter, the faculty advisor letter, and then evidence of participation or proof of payment. Typically with the student cover letter, what we're looking for is sort of the basic facts of your travel. So when is, for example, if you're going to a conference, when is the conference? What dates are you traveling? How are you getting there? Beyond that, we need to know how this is going to benefit you professionally, and what benefit it has to the University of Idaho to send you out to a conference, for example. And then on top of that, we also need to know what other sources of funding you have. Have you been exploring other sources of funding? Have you acquired other sources of funding? That's a big thing, because the way the GPSA awards work is that we really emphasize that this is funding of last resort for students. So the GPSA awards are there for students who have, scoured funding sources and have not been able to acquire anything else. And so this is to really help those students who have been struggling to find funding for what they're trying to do. So please mention if you have other funding sources, because that will affect how the funding we can give you for your application. Likewise, for the faculty advisor letter, they should also reference your the travel that's going to occur, why they think it's a good idea, why they think you're a great candidate for this, as well as mentioning, just as in the student cover letter, what funding sources are available, if they are available. And with both the student cover letter and the faculty advisor letter, it's totally fine if there's no other sources funding sources available. You're totally allowed to say that, but we do need to know that. We do need to have you mention that. The last sort of thing is we need evidence and participation, evidence of participation, proof that you're actually going to, say, the conference or whatever event you're trying to get to. Otherwise, you could say, I'm going to go to this thing, and you have no skin in the game. So there's there's nothing to keep you from not going. All right. So before I go into some frequently asked questions, does anyone in the audience have any questions for me so far? Any specific questions they'd like to get into, or anything unclear about sort of the general process of GPSA awards? Let's see if there's, I don't see anything.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I was wondering, so this is kind of a specific question. I'm traveling to a conference in December, and I'll be doing like a multi-city flight, so flying into San Francisco where the conference is, and then my return flight was going to be not back to Pullman, but it was going to be back to where I'd spend the holidays. What does that get kind of complicated with doing kind of round trip flights like that?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because a lot of people, what they try to do with their travel is they go travel for sort of the academic purpose, and then it becomes, extended in some ways for like a vacation. So certainly the flight out there from Pullman to San Francisco, I'm assuming it's AGU.
Yeah,
That,
that's right.
yeah. that would certainly be covered in your, like, that we have no issue covering that in the request. The issue, as you mentioned, is the way coming back, and so we can talk more about what that would look like, but we wouldn't be able to cover your flight back from San Francisco to where you're going home for the holidays. But we can talk about what that flight would have been from San Francisco back to Pullman, if that funding is, necessary. So does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah, that makes sense. So basically the return flight, the cost, if I were to fly back to Pullman, that would be covered, like the theoretical cost of that?
Yes, I believe so. And Amanda can maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, but
I think it's kind of case by case. I mean, sorry, I was the GPSA chair for a couple of years, and so when we had situations like that, it's just important to note it in your application. And if you're able to look at what the difference might have been for if it was just round trip, you can note that, and then the committee will just be able to make kind of an informed decision. If you feel like wherever you were flying to was more expensive, then you could ask for less of the cost. But it's not a big problem. People did that. You just need to make sure it's clear as to why you're not flying back home to campus.
Okay, thank you.
cool. Is there any other questions? Otherwise, I'll run through the sort of frequently asked things and cover that. All right. Cool. Well, in that case, so the first thing, can I apply for reimbursements for virtual conferences? Yes, since the pandemic, you are totally able to apply for reimbursements for those conferences. Obviously, you're not traveling anywhere, but we can cover things like the registration fee. So in some ways it helps because it's people going to virtual conferences request, typically are just able to request the registration fee, and so it leaves a little bit more money for other applicants. I've been using conferences as an example for a lot of these things, but you can also use the GPSA travel awards to apply for field work. It's a little bit more complicated. We need a few more things from you when you're applying for field work. For a conference, it's a little bit easier because you pay a registration fee, for example, and so there's evidence that you'll be doing what say you're going to be doing. With the field work, we require both an additional letter from the student saying, really specifying exactly what your field work is going to entail, describing that in more detail than you can put in the student cover letter. And then another letter from people you'll be interacting with to say that, yeah, this field work is actually happening. But we've definitely funded field work in the past. A couple cycles ago, we were able to do that for a student. So if there's any questions on that, please let me know on exactly what extra you need. But just know you can do it, just a little bit more that we need from you. In terms of what we have in the gray box here, if you don't know about departmental funding yet, this goes back to what you put in your application about what funding is available. So if there is funding available, if you think there might be funding available, you really need to mention that and explore that before you apply. You're certainly welcome to apply. But for example, in the last round of applications, we had students who had applied for GPSA awards, and they had applied for the COS travel grant, and then another sort of grant. And the total of all those grants was way more than their total travel expenses. And so we weren't able to give them GPSA awards because there was too many other funding options in the air that had to be resolved before we could say, okay, you've explored all your options for funding. Now we can give you, now we can provide you this sort of last resort option for funding, if that makes sense. It's also an issue if your faculty support letter is saying something different than you say when you're describing funding. We see this from time to time where the faculty might say there's X amount of funding available to do something and the student might not mention it. And so we really need that clarified before an award can be given out, just to make sure that the amount that you're requesting is the amount that you really need. When you're turning in that sort of that third piece of a sort of a normal conference application, that proof of payment does need to have your name on it, just to know that it's, you didn't just rip it off the internet or something crazy, but that you were the one who paid for it. And then the typical expenses we covered, we cover are, things, lodging, conference registration, not conference memberships, I should mention. Those are a separate thing. We will cover the registration cost, but not if you're also applying for membership, even if there's sort of a discount associated with that. But lodging, travel, airplane travel, gas, meals as well, the typical sort of travel things, and possibly some other things if you make a good case for it in your application, but that's really what we cover, the main things that we cover.
Can I add one thing, Richie, about the payment without your name on it?
Yes, please.
I think that one thing the committee has often done, like occasionally there are like proofs of payment that really don't have your name. So what sometimes people have done is done like a credit card or bank statement. You just black out anything that looks very confidential. But you can just show like the line item that was paid and just attach that with your registration. Because there were some situations where it just really wasn't there. But if you have it like in an email that is attached to your name, it just needs to show it's from you, but occasionally like a department or another person has taken care of it and you paid them back. Like sometimes there's just weird situations, so you can get creative is what we said. So you can correct me if you're not doing that, but I just know like there were occasional situations.
No, that's great, because I haven't hit that yet. So so thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, that's like we're not here to just throw out applications willy-nilly, right? We're here to work with you, but we do need that proof. All right, let's see. And so for those of you interested in a publishing award, some general some questions that come up frequently. One is the multiple authors thing. I sort of already touched on this a little bit, but you are certainly welcome to apply. Multiple authors are welcome to apply. The application is just a little bit more involved. You need to secure departmental support with the when you are submitting payments to the journal. But a lot of that is talked about in the application. It's okay if one of the authors is not a student, if you're applying for, because I think that's pretty standard. When we're writing papers, we're doing, multiple people are on a paper, but the student or the author that's applying for the award does need to be a student. That is important. The gray again, this goes back to the funding last resort, right? What if I don't know about other funding yet? You really need to have that sorted out to a degree, or at least account for that in your applications when you're applying. What if I already paid for it, but there were two authors? I think what's important to remember here, right, is that per publication, you can receive $700. So, and then keep in mind the deadline that when the article is submitted, you have until that next cycle to get that application into us. So please keep those things in mind. how many pages of these how many of these pages do I have to fill out? This is sort of more in reference to the paper application, but this is just follow the online application. That shouldn't be an issue. In the past, we've had where multiple co-authors would have to fill out additional sections, and it was sometimes kind of confusing about which additional sections were needed, but that should be somewhat taken care of in the Qualtrics form. Again, if you have questions, let me know. And then what does my department need to do to provide administrative support? As I sort of already mentioned, that administrative support is mostly someone who's going to handle interactions with the journal and sending payments to them. Okay, one of the last little bits here is note about taxes. Unfortunately, if you're international students, your award is maybe taxed heavier, and you may not receive as much as domestic students in the end. So unless you're in a tax treaty, these awards are considered other income and will be taxed at 30%. So you're really only going to receive 70% of your award. So please keep that in mind. Countries with a tax treaty are listed down below here. For domestic students, you'll receive the GPSA award as a 1098-T. So you'll also need to include that in your taxes. It won't be taxed as heavily as the international students, but you do need to account for that. All right, and that's pretty much the full rundown of the GPSA awards. Please feel free to email me with questions. My email is right there. I think it's also in the chat. So I try to check my email frequently. Typically, I allow like a week response time. So if you don't hear back from me within sort of a week, then please feel free to follow up with another email. And please email me early on. Things get a little bit hectic as we get closer to award deadlines. So in a couple weeks, my inbox is going to fill up, I imagine, quite a bit. So the earlier you email me, the more I can help you. But yeah, and I can stick around and take any questions, and thanks for having me.
I just wanted to add one more thing.
Yeah.
Like you totally touched on it, but I just want to emphasize a little bit more with the publishing awards. The only person who will be reimbursed is the person who paid for it. That's just one thing that we found. Like if there's multiple authors, whoever pays for it is who's going to get reimbursed. And if it's a student who pays for all of it, the other student cannot be reimbursed. So that's why, like if there's two authors and only one pays for it, only one can be reimbursed. So that's why if there's multiple authors applying for that 700 each, the department has to pay for it. The department is reimbursed. The department distributes that money to you, to the student who's applying. So publishing awards are just tricky if it's more than one person applying. But if you just remember, whoever pays for it is the only person getting reimbursed, then that can help. So that's all. I just wanted to emphasize that a little bit more.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I had a question about the tax for the GPSA awards. So if you're reimbursed for like $700 for conference travel, will GPSA give you $700 or taxes taken out before that's reimbursed? I was wondering if you could go over that again.
Yeah, for sure. So with the reimbursement, you'll be giving your receipts to I think it's the student office affairs. I should know. I know the person, not the not the office. I always forget the office, but you'll give your receipts to them. So whatever your total came out from that trip will be what you're reimbursed for. So you're eligible when you receive the award, you're eligible for up to that $700 in reimbursement. You may not spend that entire amount because your travel came out a little bit less. If it comes out more, you're stuck at that $700 limit. But that's what that would look like. And so as I understand it, once that money is reimbursed and you receive it, that's when you would be taxed. So whatever that final amount is. Does that help?
So the taxes are taken out before you receive the reimbursement?
No, you would, when you receive the reimbursement, whatever amount of money you were reimbursed for, that's when that'll be the amount of money that you receive the taxes on, that you receive the 1098-T form for.
Okay, gotcha. Thank
Like,
you.
You need to put it on your taxes, like yourself, like you'll type in there, I got $700 and you'll put it on your taxes. Like, yeah, I don't remember actually ever getting a form from UI about getting that.
It probably just goes on the form you get, like the 1098-T you get from UI. I wonder if it all gets factored in, like, because that's how it was for my grants and scholarships when I was in graduate school. It all just got factored onto the same form. So I wonder, Richie, do you know about that at all? Or
I don't. I
think
can
that
definitely
that's
look into it, and I should.
yeah. I
But
think that that's how that worked. I don't think you would get like two separate forms. I think it would all be like, it's like your total awards amount gets added up onto the same document, and so you'll just get one mailed to you. And they usually come in a little bit later than like W-2s. I always notice that. Like, don't like jump right on your taxes right away. It's like give it like another week for the 1098-T to come in. So
Richie, I have a question.
yeah, go for it.
My name's Kevin. I'm an online student, and I'm specifically trying to apply to travel to the university to give a presentation for my department. Is that like a authorized use of this? I've been talking with one of my faculty advisors about doing basically a presentation for the human factor psychology program, and I just didn't know if this was something that I could apply to for that, specifically to travel to Idaho, because I'm out
Yeah,
of state.
No, I
Okay.
think yeah, it's not one we get a lot very often, but from my perspective, you're traveling for an academic purpose, and you are a student at the University of Idaho just online, so you're eligible for these things.
That's right.
It's
Okay.
weird that you're traveling to the university. That's kind of a fun thing, but yeah, I think the same sort of things would apply for you. You know, just explain like the purpose of why you're coming.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
we're totally good there.
Okay, and then I'm unfortunately having to drive right now, and I may have missed it earlier. When would I know November 15th is the deadline? Like, when are the awards announced?
The awards are announced up to, I try to get them in a couple weeks after the deadline at the latest.
Okay.
So certainly by the end of November, you would hear from me whether you got the award or not, and the amount.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
well, thank you.
Yeah. When would your presentation be?
Very flexible. It would be within the plus or minus 1 and 2 cycles, I guess, as you described in your presentation. But I'm very flexible on my end, and as is my advisor. So, but I'll be
Great.
applying in November. Yeah. Thank you for the information today.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thanks for coming.
Hi, Richie. I have a question regarding publication award.
Yes.
So my publication will be multiple authors who are all faculty members. And currently my advisor has already paid for it. I recently got acceptance letter and it's been paid. And I believe my advisor has publication cost funding reserved for him through his department or institute. So in that case, well, my thinking was that I would try to get my own funding to do my part. But in this case, does that mean I will be low priority for the purpose of these awards?
That's exactly right. Yeah, because that money is already put aside for that publishing, those publishing fees.
Right.
Yeah, it wouldn't be of last resort, funding of last resort. So
But if for the future publications, if my advisor said, okay, I have this much set aside, but it will cost more than that, in that case, I can apply to GPSA fund.
Absolutely, and we definitely encourage that. If your advisor says we don't have enough money to get this full thing funded, then
Mhm.
definitely come to us. Definitely come to us.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.